Get ready for an unfair advantage over your competition. This is the Sales Edge podcast, where globally recognized sales expert and trainer Joe Pici helps you sharpen your skills for booking more appointments and closing more deals. And now, here's your host, Joe Pici.
Well, welcome back to the Sales Edge. This is Joe Pici, and we give you an unfair advantage over your competition. This is podcast number 9, and we're going to continue on with our discussion, explanation of why and how communications can give you that competitive edge, can help you garner more business, can help you retain more business, can help you really resolve conflict, can help you increase productivity. You know, as we said in our last podcast, we talked about the importance of getting into the depth and understanding of communications. And oh, so many times we believe we're great communicators. We believe because we can talk and we believe that's a big part of communication. That's just a part. It's been my experience. Great communicators enable the other person to feel very comfortable when interacting. Great communicators learn how to adapt and really give ground, concede their own behavioral need to the behavioral need of the other person. And so as we move forward in discussing this, I will say this very clearly. When it comes to communications training, it is always better live. It is always better in a training room, in a conference center, because there's so much of communication that revolves around body language, voice tones, in a handshake, in complete eye contact. But we're going to give you some of the fundamentals of what communications is all about. We're not promoting any one particular communications training, any one personality type training. There's so many of them out there. Of course, we said last time, there's DISC, and there's animals, and there's colors, and there's Myers-Briggs, and there's just TTI. There's just so many of them, and they all have great value, and all of them have their strength, their uniqueness. All of them have kind of a niche in the way they work. My first recommendation is you find one and go past the level of just awareness. You see, when you get into communications training or speaking or really education, the beginning of it is awareness. In other words, you begin to understand the importance. And hopefully in our last podcast, we gave you some important tips on what is important and why is it important to be a great communicator. And a lot of times when a person takes a personality or behavioral assessment and they get a quick overview of it, they can fall into the trap of believing that that's enough. What I'd like you to do is picture this. All of you have seen this model. It's the conscious competence model. So let me walk you through that. And I see this all the time in the communications mastery, I'll call it. Before you understand communications, you're unconsciously incompetent. In other words, for me, I was offending people and didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. I was very direct, very forceful. I came across very strongly. I talked loud, I talked fast, and I thought that was great communicating. But I wasn't aware that I was offending people. I wasn't really aware that people were feeling that I was abrasive. I might be a bully. Just in my communications, I was projecting certain things and I was not aware of it. Therefore, I was totally unconsciously incompetent. Didn't know what I didn't know. Well, what happened was I walked into a convention center many, many years ago, and there was a speaker on stage, and he was doing kind of an overview, extremely great speaker, funny, entertaining, and he was doing DISC. And after about 3 minutes, I looked at my wife and I said, I'm going to go in the lobby. I didn't come here to hear about the soft skills And I was oblivious that I was the jerk in the room. Second time I experienced it, same speaker, I kind of sat there and I said to myself, Joe, if you master this stuff, you can manipulate people. Wow. Was I off base? And many people, when it comes to communication style understandings, they will use it as a battering ram. They will use it to manipulate another person. And I really thought that I got it. I thought, this is what this is all about. If I can figure them out, then I can manipulate them to think the way I want them to think. And I can't tell you how many times people have been in our training and people have said to me, Joe, how can I get the other person to blank? Well, you can't. The third time came, and I sat through the speaker, and I realized the jerk in the room was in my seat. I realized the challenge was me. And so I became consciously incompetent. What does that mean? Well, that means I knew exactly what I didn't know. It was a very uncomfortable time in my life. We've had many, many people get to a point in our training where that happens. They become aware that the problem may be in themselves, and now they have to make a decision. We all have to make a decision. I call it the river of pain and truth. And at that river, do I want to cross the river, invest some time, invest some money, sacrifice my own behavioral communication needs, and become an expert in learning and growing? That becomes a conscious decision. I chose to cross the river. Now, I can tell you it was one of the most uncomfortable times in my life because I had to relearn how I was communicating with people. I had to relearn that I wasn't a good listener. I had to learn that there were skills and understandings in the way you listen. And so I did cross that road. I did cross the river of pain and truth. I recommend you do so. And on the other side of the river of pain and truth, you continue to study, you continue to execute. And I will say you have to use the learn, do, teach method. So many people who do behavioral training, they learn it and then they teach it, but they never master it. They never do it. And I've met so many people. In fact, I just talked to a gentleman on the phone the other day who's been through so much training in personalities and behaviors. And he said, Joe, I learned this stuff. He said, but I have such a hard time adapting to other people, which means he doesn't do it. Now, when a person learns it and then teaches it, you can lose your audience. You can be labeled a fraud because you're not really teaching from experience. You're teaching from knowledge only. And so once I crossed that road, I continue to execute it every day. Whether it's from stage, realizing that in every training room, in every conference center, in every coaching session, the people I'm working with are in a different behavior style, and I have to adapt the way I communicate with them. It's up to me to communicate. So first I have to understand my own behavior style. Then I have to understand their behavior style. And then I have to make our what we call adapters. And if you're speaking in front of a large room, I know some of the people who are listening to this do stage speaking and training. Understand that in that room of people, there's all different behavior styles. And when I first started speaking, I spoke from one behavior style, which meant about 10% of the audience was having a great time. And the rest of the people thought I was a raving lunatic, in which I was. And so I have to adapt constantly. Plus, we utilize the DISC model. Now, we've taken it a step further into more adaptive behaviors, but the model is DISC. And what I liked about this was when you look at the blends, in other words, there's a dominant behavior style, but then you have some other behavior styles that blend in. There's about 43 different blends. And as we move forward down the road, we'll try to take this to another level. But honestly, what that means is nobody is one thing all the time. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of the communication styles. And you may want to take out a pencil. If you're driving, then don't take out a pencil and write this. But basically, people operate in two different aspects when it comes to pace. In pace, you're either fast-paced or slow-paced. Fast-paced people kind of make decisions quickly, okay? They process quickly. They do things quickly. They usually run a little bit early. It doesn't make them better or worse. It's just the cloth they come from. Whereas other people may be slightly slower paced. Now, slow does not mean stupid. Slow means they process things. In other words, they think before they jump. And so these people usually read all the details on your proposals and your contracts. These people find all your mistakes in your PowerPoints. These people want all the details. And so right now, if you're sitting there and if you're saying, okay, well, today I'm operating a little bit more fast-paced, or today I'm operating a little bit more slow-paced. And my recommendation for you is continuously assess where you are today, because stress, surprises, new jobs, there's so many things that happen in our life. You're not always the same behavior style. And so you're going to find that, and I'm not anti-assessments, please don't misunderstand that, but you may take an assessment and you may not be what the assessment says. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It just means that at that particular time, you're operating more in a different behavior. That's why I use behaviors more than personalities, because behavior doesn't lie and behavior can change. Now, the pace part is kind of simple. We're going to go into a more important part, what I call priority. And priority is, what do you place the highest priority on? Do you place a higher priority on being more task-oriented, or do you place a higher priority on being more people-oriented? Now, if you're task-oriented, you probably have a checklist. You probably check things down. Tasks create a higher priority in your life. Doesn't mean you don't like people. If you're more people-oriented, you're more relational, and people orientation, or your focus is more on relationship. Now, that does not mean people who are task-oriented don't care about people. And it doesn't mean people who are people-oriented don't care about tasks. It's which one do you play a higher priority on? I'm going to give you an example. Hopefully this will be clear. You know, many years ago in the early 90s, Dawn and I found ourselves in massive debt. And so I was a football coach, and she was a voice teacher, and we knew we had to dig our way out. So we got into a part-time direct sales business, and I would work 100 hours a week, and in a little bit of time left, I was out there building our business. Now, my wife would say, Joe, the kids need to see you. And I say, I know they need to see me, but I'm fighting for our lives. I'm fighting for our future. I'm fighting to get these kids out of financial bondage. You see, my priority was on completing a task. That didn't mean I didn't love my children. My wife's priority also knew that this business had to be built. She was my partner. But her priority was more about the relationships and the time spent with the children. Were we both right? Yes. Why? And everything has to do why. I was building that business and completing tasks because I did love my children. I still love my children. And because I placed a high priority on task completion, we did free our children, and we were able to do things for our children. However, if you're more task-oriented, in other words, you view life through, I have to get this done. I have my checklist. This is more important to me. Not why, but this is more important to me. You're more task-oriented. If you are more people-oriented, then it's more about the people you see, more relational. There is no better or best. Now, here's a very interesting statistic. 90% of all conflict, 90%, happens when one person is task-oriented and one person is people-oriented. And I will tell you, Dawn and I have been together now 47 years. We have a magnificent marriage, and we're in business together. We've been in business together since 1992. We are now in 2019. And I will tell you that if we have a challenge, and we really don't challenge anymore, but if we have a challenge, our disagreements are over. I'm task-oriented, she's people-oriented. That's not going to change. However, we've learned to adapt and understand each other, and so there is less friction. Now, in understanding that puts you in 4 quadrants. In other words, we're looking at a fast-paced, task-oriented person, and that's what we would call the direct. Fast-paced, task-oriented. And only about 10% of the population, that is their dominant behavior style, okay? Now, also fast-paced are fast-paced, people-oriented. This is about 27% of the population. These are your party people. These are your magnets for people. They're fast-paced. They're people-oriented. Everybody likes them. They like to have a good time. And this is, like I said, 27% of the population. So the top of the quadrant, if you were drawing a circle, you would draw facing that circle. On the upper left-hand column, you would say the word is direct. Fast-paced, task-oriented. If you were facing the upper right hand, you would write interactive. Interactive because they like to talk, okay? Fast-paced, people-oriented. Now going clockwise, we're going to go below the quadrant and go to your slower-paced people. In the right bottom, you're going to have what's called the steady. This is your slower-paced, people-oriented. This is about 35% of the population. This is the largest quadrant there is of the communication styles. So these are slower-paced people. We like to use the word steady, and steady because they don't like change, okay? And they are steady and extremely helpful people. Now go to the bottom left, and this is the slower-paced, task-oriented person. This is about 28% of the population. If you're in this quadrant, you've added up all the numbers to make sure it comes out 100. These are, I like to use the word calculating. Calculating in a way that these people absolutely calculate everything. They're very process-oriented. They're very process and procedure-oriented. There has to be a rhyme or reason for everything. They analyze everything. And so when you look at this now, above the midline, you have 2 fast-paced, the direct and the interactive. And this is going to be, say, about 17% of the population. Now, if you go down, 37% of the population. Sorry, calculators. And if you go below, you're going to have your slower-paced people. Now, if you look to the left side, you're going to have your task-oriented, your D's and your C's. And this is, if you look at this now, really look at this, 28% of population, the biggest population are people-oriented, the I's and the S's. So when you look at this whole thing, it breaks down very simply. Now, I wish it was that simple, and it's not, because you have blends and you have stress and you have all different things that happen in people's lives, but predominantly you get an idea. So let's wrap this up. I just want you to know that I challenge you to study and become a great communicator. When it comes to business, it will add to your bottom line. It'll attract and retain an incredible amount of employees and clients. This is Joe Peachy. Peachy and Peachy is the sponsor of The Sales Edge. This is The Sales Edge. This is podcast number 9. And we'd like you to contact me. You can go on my LinkedIn, Joe Peachy, P-I-C-I. You can go to my website, www.piciandpici.com. You can call Joe for a free cup of Joe, 407-947-2590. And you can send me an email with a question, joe@piciandpici.com. Put in the tagline on top, Sales Edge. In a couple weeks, we're going to have a much easier, simpler way to contact me. We're going to have a much easier way for you to get free downloads. We're putting that in process right now. Once again, this has been the Sales Edge. Become a great communicator, and we'll see you in our next podcast.
Thanks for listening. New episodes will air each Tuesday and Thursday, so make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a 5-star review. The Sales Edge is sponsored by Peachy & Peachy Incorporated, a firm which provides training, consulting, and keynote presentations, empowering corporations and individuals to attract and retain quality clients for higher revenues and growth. Make more money in sales. Speak with Joe in person by calling 407-947-2590 or visit www.peachyandpeachy.com. Spelled PICIAND, PICI.com.